What's up, everybody? Great show coming your way over the next 2 hours. Lots to talk about, including Pittsburgh has appeared as a surprise contender for Daniel Jones, ? We'll break all that down. Plus, if you've been watching Court of Gold on Netflix, you might have heard a familiar voice. Spoiler alert, it's mine, and I didn't know I was in it. We'll talk about that, and great guests, including Katie Nolan, who is awesome, the host of Casuals on Sirius XM, will be joining us in hour 2. Stay tuned for all that and more coming up on Gojo and Golic.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Gojo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., the golden voice of Jesse Cofield. We got a great show for you guys. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review us, leave us a 5-star rating, and check us out live Monday through Friday, right here, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. Subscribe and hit the bell on the Gojo and Golic YouTube channel. Show us some love there or wherever you get your podcast. Katie Nolan at 9 o'clock Eastern, which will be fun. As Jesse mentioned, host of Casuals now. The last times we were talking to Katie Nolan on here, she was calling Major League Baseball games. So we're coming right around the corner for spring training. So how does someone that was an expert for a while now feel dipping back into the casual waters where we kind of occupy our lives over here? So that'll be fun to catch up with Katie. She's doing wonderfully, unsurprisingly, with that show. Plenty of Major League Baseball news to get into with her, by the way. We've got certainly big picture stuff that we will get to, sound from Rob Manfred as he addresses the future of the sport and potential salary caps. Dad, I'm starting to feel bad, too, for Toronto Blue Jays fans. Their entire existence as of late seems to be, well, we almost signed this superstar player and got them to come here. We were tracking flights for Shohei Ohtani. We made an offer to Juan Soto, and now it looks like Vlad Guerrero Jr., their homegrown guy, is going to walk out of the door, too, here. It's got to be a rough time for those fans right now. I feel for them.
Oh, without question. When you can't bring in a big free agent, which I guess isn't stunning if you can't compete money-wise with the big money teams that we'll get into, but when you can't hold on to your own, when you feel you've made as you said, we'll discuss it, a very, very aggressive offer, and Vlad says, nah, I'm gonna hit free agency. And listen, I don't blame a player of his caliber for hitting free agency. When you get a couple of teams bidding, I mean, especially the money teams, you're going to hit it. So that's what free agency is all about, is to check out your worth. And he's a guy that feels he knows his worth. So I can't blame him one bit for that.
And the fact that they let it get to this point with Vlad Guerrero Jr., knowing, like, I understand there were a couple of seasons where there was a bit of a lull in there, and he played some of his best ball at the right time leading into this, where now you're right, he's going to become a free agent at 27 years old, and we'll get into the familiar refrain and the reason that Rob Manfred is having to come in and have these conversations about a potential hard cap. The looming CBA negotiation is the names that immediately get thrown to the top of the heap that would be looking at his services are the Mets and the Yankees. And we're having this conversation about the Dodgers right now. And if all of the good players end up conglomerating on the same team, is this good for the sport? The age-old question with that. So plenty to get to there. We also have to have a talk. Jessie, have you felt different since your appearance in the Court of Gold documentary on Netflix? How you doing with that?
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, people are stopping me in the streets. They're like, "Are you pundit one?" Yeah, so really changed things for me. Pretty funny though. Bailey, our guy Bailey Kennedy, he was watching it and he was like, "Wait a minute, is that Jessie?" So completely random, unclear how that clip made its way into the doc, but pretty funny.
Well, you didn't know.
No.
You didn't know you were going to be in it, right?
No, I had no idea. I got the clip sent to me, and everyone was like, "This is you."
Yeah, no, Dad, Bailey did alert me that Jesse's voice is obviously in this, which we'll get to coming up in about 10 minutes. Your laugh is about in this, and as Bailey put it, I'm the only one who was cut from this show in the documentary, so gonna have to have a word with the Netflix folks about the Court of Gold nonsense in there. But yeah, Bailey was just watching for any crumb of Anthony Edwards that he could get during that docuseries that followed Team USA and followed the Olympic basketball journey in general, with a bunch of funny clips that have made their way to the timeline, including Jesse's voice going out and describing one of Team USA's throttling victories.
Listen, they were just, if my laugh got in there, they were just rewarding me for all the Netflix content that I watch, right? I mean, and that's maybe why you weren't in it. Maybe you aren't digesting enough Netflix content.
Yeah, you got to get those numbers up. They were looking at your username, and they were like, "We're not putting that guy in there."
That is true. Even after my dad tried to belittle Love is Blind yesterday when we were talking to David Dennis Jr., I, an ardent supporter 8 seasons in of one of their main franchises in the reality dating scene. I'm not saying, but I'm just saying. So I will try my best not to be bitter about all of this here. But, Dad, before we get to any of that, Jessie mentioned, and this headline on the surface, not anything to write home about, right? That the Pittsburgh Steelers may be interested in the services of one Daniel Jones, who last time on Dragon Ball Z finished up in the middle of this season as the quarterback for the New York Giants, ended up getting traded and going over to the Minnesota Vikings to back up Sam Darnold while they made their run. And now all the questions abound at quarterback there for the Vikings surrounding Sam Darnold and J.J. McCarthy. And Daniel Jones is kind of over here waving his hand in an offseason where we know quarterback wasteland, kind of barren. And Dad, this to me was more interesting for the Pittsburgh Steelers because I don't know what you do if you're them at this point. The entire offseason, they seem to have structured this as we tried. Like the Trevor Lawrence rumors from the end of last week that they were interested in potentially going and getting Trevor Lawrence out of Jacksonville and bringing him up there, that Trevor quickly shot down and seemed to have not produced anything. Seems like the trial balloon you throw out there when you want to make it seem like, we swung big, and now we're going to go either re-sign Justin Fields or sign back Daniel Jones. So, Dad, what do the Steelers do this season? Because they're in a strange place where you have been successful enough where you'd be the envy of most teams in the league, but by your own standard, even with this coach and Mike Tomlin, you have not accomplished near where you need to in the football that matters for a long time now. And it looks like you're going to be no closer to that this year, shuffling the deck with any of the quarterbacks that we've bantered about for them.
Well, I mean, I think, people talk about fitting the Arthur Smith offense, and that's basically a running offense and a pass-second offense. But if you look at the passing, at least the passing of Daniel Jones, it's probably a greater passing than Justin Fields. Now, maybe we haven't seen that over time, but maybe that's what Pittsburgh – and listen, this is all a lot of it is based on what's available as far as young talent like Sam Darnold, Daniel Jones, Justin Fields, as opposed to older talent, like older damaged talent like Kirk Cousins, Aaron Rodgers, those types. Matthew Stafford, we don't know what the availability is there. But a weak draft class, right? So I think and there's only, I would say 3 now. It seems like Jackson Dart is I'm gonna, just because of the way quarterbacks are treated, I'm gonna say he goes in the top 10. I mean, it just feels like an overreach of a quarterback position to the hilt this year, because it really isn't a dominant quarterback, even though Cam Ward says, don't pick me, you're going to regret it, you're going to see me if you're blah, 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 blah. You love when you hear that from a quarterback. It's a lack of draft-capable quarterbacks coming in and starring right away. So it's like, what does a team do in the interim? Well, the Pittsburgh Steelers have been looking, and they've gone high draft picks, obviously, for quarterbacks since Ben Roethlisberger, but have failed. So they're still trying to find their quarterback of the future. And even if they pick up Daniel Jones, I don't know if that's the quarterback of the future, or Justin Fields is a quarterback of the future. It just feels, outside of the teams that are going to draft a Cam Ward, a Shedeur Sanders, or a Jackson Dart, you have to kind of fill the gap and with a quarterback now until you get to the quarterback. And Daniel Jones' name is out there as far as this offense, a running offense, that secondary passing offense. I could see him fitting in that. I mean, listen, Daniel Jones.
Yeah, but fitting into what ceiling, Dad? Like, what does that actually do for the Steelers' hopes of doing anything in the
nothing? Nothing. That's my point. I mean, the teams are in a holding pattern right now to find what's the option. What's the option for the Steelers? I mean, they're not going to find the quarterback of the future this year in free agency or the draft, it would seem, unless somebody hits later on in the draft. So I guess you can only deal in the reality of the moment, and that is all teams that are looking for quarterbacks are seriously searching for a stopgap quarterback until they can get the quarterback of the future. So what's the best stopgap quarterback that you can get that maybe you'll catch lightning in a bottle like Minnesota did with Sam Darnold for 14 wins, and even though it was an early exit in the playoffs, that surprised everybody, right? Nobody saw that coming from Sam Darnold. So that's kind of what you're hoping for with a stopgap quarterback.
Well, at least in that situation, we did say going in, if anyone's going to get the best out of Sam Darnold, it's going to be Kevin O'Connell. It's going to be this offense that has Justin Jefferson and Addison and all the rest of these guys that you can point to as weapons and a structure around him that can make this happen. No one feels that way about the Steelers offense right now. George Pickens is mercurial on the field at best. They're going to lose Najee Harris in the backfield and going to trot out Jalen Warren and whoever else they put behind an offensive line that they've at least invested young draft picks in. But you're right, Dad. There's a lot of teams in a holding pattern, but a lot of teams haven't been as consistently good in that holding pattern as the Steelers. Like, that's the other problem, is the other teams have at least been bad. They've been mired in mediocrity, and so if they can build something besides that, people might be surprised. In Pittsburgh, I just wonder, for 2 years ago, the fact that we were dealing with Mike Tomlin hot seat conversations for the first time meaningfully in my adult life, you're going to go through this season again, and the expectation is going to be largely the same in a division where one team's got the guy that's been the MVP or a close to the MVP for the last 2 or 3 seasons in Lamar Jackson, and they keep efforting ways to get better. Joe Burrow and the Bengals right now working overtime, PR-wise at least, to try and bring back star players and feel like they want to keep this team competitive. Cleveland Browns, that's kind of a different story. Holy hell, did that go poorly quickly. But I guess if you're the Steelers, you're used to being one of the good teams. You're used to being one of the haves that people talk about. And at the very least now, you're good but not exciting in a way that you can sell a fan base who's now got better taste. You've given them better taste, and they've got nothing to go on with. And so it just makes me wonder what you're supposed to sell Steelers fans this year in terms of getting them excited about watching this football team.
Yeah, listen, there's nothing to say. We're in a quarterback lull, right? It's either a cast-off young quarterbacks who were high draft picks and are now on their second or third teams, or it's old, broken down quarterbacks that you're trying to catch lightning in a bottle. I mean, we're definitely in a lull. There's really nothing. It's the Steelers trying to decide what's the best fit before we find the quarterback of the future. Is it Justin Fields, who has thrown a high of 17 touchdown passes in 2022? Is it Daniel Jones, who threw 24 touchdowns his rookie year? You know, do you go with a younger guy? Do you go with an older guy? We're in a lull. We're in a fill-in-the-blank pattern until you can find your quarterback.
With the Steelers, though, you question their ability to do that because, A, they've already missed on the eval, and B, based on how they continue to play under Mike Tomlin, which is good because he's a good coach, they're not going to be in range for any guy near the top of the draft if they want to try and find a young quarterback of the future. No. And so it all goes back to, and this made me think of this because of the headline yesterday, the Carolina Panthers re-signed Andy Dalton to go be the backup for Bryce Young, and that phrasing is important. Because I don't know if there was any performance more important in the back half of last season for a franchise trying to get itself back to prominence and for a coach in his second year in Dave Canales than what Bryce Young did in the back half of last season, where now he went out and performed well enough to where Carolina can go, whew, okay, we don't have to worry about ditching our number 1 overall pick 2 years into his career after benching him for the Red Rifle in the middle of this season here. He came back, played like the guy that we saw coming out of Alabama, and now they get to go through this offseason thinking about, well, let's add weapons. Let's go add to the defense. It was, franchise-altering performance from Bryce Young in the back half of last season in so many ways to keep them out of that rat race.
Think of life and how that came about. I mean, seriously, Andy Dalton took over for Bryce Young. Everybody said Bryce Young is done. How did Bryce Young get his job back? Andy Dalton won his first start, lost his next 4, but was still going to be continuing to be the quarterback. Everybody thought it was the end of Bryce Young. Andy Dalton got in a car accident and hurt his thumb. Not on the field, didn't get injured on the field, hurt his thumb in a car accident. That's how Bryce Young got his job back, and then he flourished. And now, just what you said, instead of going into the offseason wondering what the quarterback position is going to be, it's like, okay, we can build around your guy. It's amazing what circumstances lead to a situation. And now they re-sign Andy Dalton. They love the relationship of Andy, the old Andy Dalton, and the young Bryce Young, and the working relationship that they have. What I think $6 million guaranteed, 2-year, $8 million contract. But you think about the steps that got Bryce Young back in. It wasn't even a football situation. It was a car accident, or Bryce Young would have been done in Carolina. It's just wild how life turns, and when he got the chance, what he made of it. So that really keeps Carolina going in the right direction, thinking they have their quarterback and can now build around it, where teams that are looking for a quarterback, as we've been talking about, are all in a holding pattern because there are no quarterbacks out there available that are, yes, this is the future of our franchise quarterback.
Well, that's what makes the Matthew Stafford will they, won't they. And I think we're going to talk to Jordan Rodriguez, who covers the Rams for The Athletic, on Thursday to find out exactly where we're at with the relationship with the Los Angeles Rams and their star quarterback, Matthew Stafford. Again, from the outside looking in, I have no idea why this is a conversation given where the Rams are, but Sean McVay and the Rams are an organization that we've already seen make a pivot early on a quarterback when they feel like they know something, when they feel like, hey, we know Jared Goff is only going to be able to do but so much in the confines of what we have going on here, and we're going to go out and try and swing big at a guy like Matthew Stafford. And so I look at them as canary in the coal mine is probably a wrong way to go, but just if something is actually buzzing there, what it tells us about the eval for the upcoming quarterback class, what they think about next year's class, because all of that is something we have to keep an eye on while these teams sort of tread water.
Well, that would be an amazing thing to me if the Rams are thinking about getting rid of Stafford. Is what do you do? You're in a win now mode. What do you do with the quarterback position? You're not going to find your future quarterback in this draft or in free agency. What do you stopgap that with? And are you wasting a year of the potential of winning? When your window is open, especially in that division, which is an open division. But obviously, fiscal responsibility comes along with it. If Stafford wants another contract, you up his years, you give him more money. Obviously, that plays into it as well. But from a practical standpoint of the Rams is, what position are they in without Matthew Stafford? Again, what quarterback are you going to bring in? There is no quarterback available. Can we agree on this? No quarterback available that's better than Matthew Stafford. Correct?
No, I said that yesterday. I said if you were to consider him in this class, he'd be far and away the best one there, which is funny considering we're talking about this with a quarterback group that at some point Kirk Cousins is going to get cut by the Falcons. Aaron Rodgers, we know, was shown the door by the New York Jets. This time last year, we were talking about both of those teams. The Falcons that had just signed Kirk Cousins to another $100 million deal, and the Jets that had pinned their hopes to Rodgers a year before that. Both of them as playoff teams. Both of these older players coming off Achilles injuries, we looked at and said, yes, can absolutely still be a part of winning football. And now the way we talk about them is if they're being pulled off the scrap heap like everyone else here. It is amazing how quickly things can change around the National Football League. Coming up next, though, speaking of fiscal responsibility, let's hear from the commissioner of Major League Baseball on an ominous potential future for the sport. Next on Gojo and Golic. Welcome back to Gojo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Jesse Cofield here. And Major League Baseball season right around the corner. And I thought this was interesting, Dad. I did not realize that the Major League Baseball CBA is up at the end of 2026. So we are steadily nearing the end of labor peace, at least in this sport. And For Rob Manfred, the State of the Union before the season really zeroed in on one thing, and it's been the conversation that's dominated the sport for the last couple of years, especially in the wake of the Dodgers, just continuing to sign players to 9-figure contracts. All of the deferrals there is the classic, is this good for the sport? Major League Baseball, a famously uncapped sport where, yes, you're going to have competitive balance tax, but if you've got owners like Steve Cohen, like everyone else, willing to pay that, you can go out here and operate with impunity and do whatever you want within the confines of the rules. And there's going to start to be more and more people, especially as these local TV deals go belly up and certain organizations are losing out on that income in a way that does affect this. How long Major League Baseball can sustain this? So Rob Manfred took to the podium yesterday to talk about that payroll disparity and what there is to be done about that going forward.
Disparity, it should be. It certainly is at the top of my list of concerns about what's going on in the sport. When I say I can't be critical of Dodgers, they're doing what the system allows. If I'm going to be critical of something, it's not going to be the Dodgers, it's going to be the system.
And all roads in that conversation, Dad, lead back to, for years, what I'm sure Major League Baseball's owners have wanted and what the players have rightly put down is the idea of a hard salary cap, something to force their hand, because this offseason, while $4.6 billion got spent in free agency, a quarter of that was spent by two teams, in the Dodgers and the Mets. There were 8 teams that didn't spend more than $50 million as we went about acquiring all of these various stars this offseason. So, Dad, do you think this gets Major League Baseball any closer to the dream for the management side of getting a league with more of a hard cap, kind of the way we've seen the NBA backdoor their way into this with the second apron?
Well, knowing the power of the players, the baseball union, players union, is the strongest union of the major sports. I would have a hard time if they don't want a hard cap, them getting a hard cap because of the strength of that union. And, right now, again, there are taxes. To put it simply, if you spend over $301 million, and there's only 2 teams that are spending over $301 million, that's the Dodgers at $392 and the Mets at $321. For every dollar you spend over $301 million, roughly 60% of every dollar gets taxed. It's called the Cohen tax, the Steve Cohen tax, because of the amount of money that he spends. But like he even said, I had a budget going into this year, but they blew by the budget. You know why? Because they can, because he can, because he's worth $20-some billion and he can blow through the budget because the rules say he can blow through the budget. He'll have to pay a tax, but he can afford the tax. There are some owners that can afford it and don't want to pay it. Others that can't really afford it, though that's hard to believe, but don't want to pay the tax. And you talked about the regional networks kind of going belly up. Well, the Dodgers isn't. The Dodgers make $334 million on their regional TV deal. And again, the big thing we have to remember for the Dodgers is Shohei Ohtani deferred $680 million of a $700 million deal. That's unheard of. Guys will defer, and the Dodgers had over $1 billion in deferrals, but that was helped by $680 million of it being Shohei Ohtani. It still blows my mind. He's taking $20 million over 10 years and deferring the rest to 10 years after that. So that obviously helps the Dodgers, but still you have a haves and haves not in the sport.
So should they do something about it?
Well, again, they'll try and do something about it, but the players' union is so strong in baseball, I don't know what they're going to get away with doing.
But do you think something needs to be done? Like, do you think this is a problem for Major League Baseball, that you've got a handful of teams continuing to hoard talent and money over everyone else?
Mike, this has been a problem since I started in this business in '95, the haves and the have-nots. But every now and then, a have-not will pull through and win a World Series. And everyone will go, see, you can do it. Farm system, spend smartly, you can do it. But for the most part, you can't do it. It's going to be a high payroll team that's going to win. But a few times, the have-nots have won it to keep kind of it's not even balanced. It's very skewed to the haves and the have-nots. That should something be done for the fairness of the sport? Probably. But again, good luck getting that by the players and the agents, especially the agents.
Yeah, it will be interesting. Like, the power of Major League Baseball players over the last 5 or 6 years has come into question a little bit as there were free agency issues that popped up, the meat of the bell curve starting to struggle to get paid in the same way as some of their star counterparts. But yeah, generally I agree with you. And listen, as someone that always skews for pro player on all these things, I don't want a hard cap for these guys. I don't even want anything closely resembling that. But it's also impossible to argue with the NFL. It has been one of the keys to at least something resembling, competition and parity in the league. Now, we are coming off of a Patriots dynasty that spanned almost 2 decades and went right into a Chiefs team that got to the playoffs or the championship 5 of the last 6 years. So it's not like it can completely eliminate it, but we're seeing in the NBA right now this metamorphosis with the second apron that mimics a hard cap that has absolutely prevented teams from getting star players together in the same bunch as it used to.
So it's a matter of, if the owners can get that in, what do they have to give up to the players? It's all negotiating, right? If the players are, and again, the baseball union is the strongest union. So the players, if they're going to give up anything, they're going to get something back for it. What I don't know. Because listen, as I said, this is big. I mean, we talk about the Dodgers now, but remember in the 90s, it was the evil empire, and that wasn't Star Wars. That was George Steinbrenner. That was George spending all the money in the world for the Yankees to buy a World Series, as they always said. And now there are a handful of teams that can spend the money. And depending on how a player defers their money, of how that helps a given situation. So can they, I don't think there'll ever be a hard cap. Can they tax more? Again, I am not smart enough to know the ins and outs of the football cap. I understand more than the baseball and the basketball, which really, as you said, gets into the second apron and the different money disparity. But all I know is the baseball union, and we as football players envied the baseball players union and their strength, because we never showed that power. We never showed that unity as football players, as a union. Never. And we still haven't. And the owners have always had it over the players. And it's not been the case in baseball. And I don't see that changing much.
Yeah, no, it probably won't change a ton there. And I would dispute that it's even necessary. Like, to your point, most of my adult lifetime has been major markets like the Yankees in baseball, really everywhere. We see this all across sports, where there are always going to be certain markets that have an advantage. If the Yankees and the Dodgers didn't have an advantage financially, they would have the advantage geographically, even in a day and age where we talk about being past some of this stuff. And if you're a big enough star, you can be a star anywhere. There's still advantages to that when it comes to free agency and getting guys over there. Baseball has more means to control guys' availability to get to true free agency than almost any other sport right now, sans maybe the NFL with the franchise tag. But all in all, I don't know if it's super necessary. I think having big brands that are well known and either vilified or loved is generally good for sport overall. And while, maybe it makes the offseason a little less fun if you've got fewer players in these big free agent battles, I think ultimately it gets you back to the same place, which is sports in general has always been about people finding creative solutions to their personnel problems here. In the NBA, we see it all the time in Oklahoma City. That's not a place that should field a basketball team as good as it has over multiple iterations of that franchise. But they have found a way. I mean, in baseball, we know we've had Moneyball. We've had all these different things. Like, part of that is just sports. That's what we've always signed up for.
And it's the knowledge of the capologist in whatever sport you're looking at, the money people, the foresight of how you pay and when you pay players. Are you kicking the can down the road to a horrible payday in a couple of years where the bottom's going to fall out? Are you doing it smartly, i.e. the Chiefs, to where you can build and structure? Now, having the best quarterback certainly helps, but you can structure it to be a dominant team. Or are you waiting to pay like the Dallas Cowboys, waiting to pay? Are you Cincinnati, where you're going to have to keep restructuring Joe Burrow's deal that's going to be horrific in a couple of years the way you do that? This comes down to not the athletes. This comes down to the business people who are running the show and pulling the purse strings. You have a Steve Cohen who said, I had a payroll budget in mind, but I blew through it because I want a winning team. So if you have that, above, it depends on who you listen to, right? If you have a budget in mind, but you have an owner that's worth $20-some billion and you want a winning team and you're like, okay, so I see business-wise you're telling me to do this, but I want a winner. I'm going to pay Juan Soto, $700-some million. I'm going to spend. And what are your business people going to do? They're just going to throw their hands up and said, well, we told you a smarter way to do that can show some longevity. But if you want to spend the money, you want to spend the money. So it really, I think professional sports comes down to the business minds working the money, working the caps, working the second aprons, working everything to keep their teams, going in the right direction.
No, I think you had the right level and then you came down. Sports in general comes down to motivated sick rich sickos.
Yeah.
Richos? Motivated rich sickos is really what it comes down to. If you stumble into a Steve Cohen who's a fan that just happens to get rich, you can have life pretty good. I saw a headline the other day that there's a Texas Tech booster, I think, that just sold an oil company for like $4.5 billion. And now, surprise, surprise, they've got the #1 transfer class in college football. Like, this stuff isn't hard to follow. SMU's oil money getting back into the game now. For years, you could watch that. And college football, to me, is a great proxy for Major League Baseball because they're both highly regional sports that are now trying to cosplay as national sports and have gotten funded by pockets of motivated rich sickos. That's what it comes down to for everybody is, does your rich sicko get there at the right time? And for Major League Baseball, going back to this, it's kind of like, and this is another very regional sport that turned into a national commodity for them, the English Premier League. The only way to go over and win in that league is to spend rampantly. And so if you've got a rich sicko that's not worried about lighting a bunch of money on fire to try and go get the best players, man, you can have a really good time in your sport. And you've just kind of got to wait around in the cycles for when the rich sicko makes his way to you.
And I think that Steve Cohen and the Mets is more the norm than of the rich. And that was George Steinbrenner. That was George Steinbrenner saying, I'm going to outspend everybody because I want championships. My goal is championships. Everything else be damned. The Dodgers are an outlier. Again, I keep saying Shohei Ohtani deferring $680 million. That now the team, what they did is they put that back into the roster. So, but they were basically handed that by Shohei Ohtani. So they did a smart business thing because they had the money to put it back in the roster and not put it in their pockets. They put it into the roster and they signed multiple players. We talk about the Mets re-signing Alonso, okay, but really signing Juan Soto. You look at the list of players the Dodgers signed in free agency and had the ability to re-sign. A lot of that was Shohei, and that's unheard of. I don't know if that's going to happen again. There'll be more $700 million contracts, but I don't know if you're going to get a guy deferring over 90% of it.
No, it was certainly a unique situation, but then you still have to be willing to go out and spend that. And to the point that we made, there's a bunch of teams that didn't even crack $50 million in what they spent this offseason.
Right.
So you could had teams that had players deferred where people would have still sat on their hands because some organizations in pro sports only want to be so good. Some organizations in pro sports, that's what Joe Burrow's fighting with the Bengals, have wanted to be good enough to put butts in seats and the rest be damned.
Now, Steve Cohen is saying the right things by saying, I want to build through the farm system. I want to bring up younger, cheaper talent. But, I mean, that's great to say until a star becomes available and you can throw down the most money to get him. Then, just like he said, I had a budget in mind, but we blew through the budget. I want to grow through the farm system. Oh, wait, he's available for $700 million? Let's bring him in.
God, yeah, Steve Cohen is like me going grocery shopping here. I buy all these ingredients with the intention to do right, and then on the way home, I drive past Wendy's and they're debuting a new Frosty, and what am I to do but go throw money at it? We'll be back after this on Gojo and Golic.
Welcome back to Gojo and Golic. The 6-part documentary series Court of Gold premiered on Netflix yesterday. So it follows the men's basketball teams of the United States, France, Serbia, and Canada at the 2024 Paris Olympics. And in episode 4, you might have heard a little voice. Take a listen.
Gotta run through the tape. Oh, cookies and milk.
USA Basketball has been putting on a clinic onto the knockout stage, winning by an average of 21.3 points. That is a lot. Anything can happen in the knockout round, but come on. Are you gonna go against Team USA on either side here? Oh my God, who is she?
Wait.
It's me. That's
Wow.
me. Yeah. Impressive.
Breaking it down.
So
Yeah.
a heaping helping of Jessie Cofield there, and it wasn't a chuckle, it was like a cough from Dad. Dan, I think you coughed into the microphone over Jessie's sound at the end of that clip is what it sounded like.
And quite honestly, I didn't even hear it. I didn't
Yeah.
even hear it. I mean, Jessie is the star of this. You got nothing in it. I got a cough laugh in it, and Jessie got an analytical breakdown.
Yeah.
I mean, pretty impressive, Jessie. What was the residual on that? What was your check like?
Well, considering I didn't even know I was in it, it would be a big fat 0. I was also referenced as Pundit 1. They didn't even use my name. But it's pretty funny. It's pretty funny because I just had no idea that I was in it. I guess that's how it works. Maybe some clips got aggregated. They were making this Netflix doc. They're like, oh, this one sounds good because obviously I have an incredible voice. So they wanted to use it. And yeah, Pundit 1, really life-changing.
Wow, Netflix, you will be hearing from our lawyers because this is an unacceptable theft of Jessie's name, voice, and likeness that will not be tolerated.
Yeah, we should really do
Jessie-
an online campaign to make them change Pundit 1 to Jessie Cofield. So that's
And Jessie, by the way, pundit means an expert in a particular subject or field who is frequently called on to give opinions about it to the public. Wow. How about that?
I think we need to get some fact checkers too, but yeah. Amazing stuff from
It's,
me, as always.
It was. And Court of Gold in general, the clips have been going viral. I haven't watched it yet. Our producer Bailey went through and poured over it just to find any scrap of Anthony Edwards, who, outside of Kevin Durant, was the most interesting part of all this. Do we have the sound of Anthony Edwards talking to Barack Obama, the former president of the United States, a man obviously well known for his basketball acumen and fandom, going in and talking to a lot of these guys on Team USA who have been around him? Like, we've seen the Key and Peele sketch from going in the locker rooms and dapping up guys on various Team USA squads. And as he sits and talks to the elder statesmen, the basketball players that came up truly revering Barack Obama, in walks Anthony Edwards to make sure that even the former president of the United States knows good and damn well that he is him.
You can hoop a little bit, huh? Just a little bit, huh?
Man, y'all better stand down. I'm the truth.
He's the truth. He said he's the truth. Yeah?
D-boy, no.
LeBron.
Come on,
Listen, are y'all talking to this young man? Because he just keeps on. Right now, he just said he's the truth and all that. And
the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the
that's
truth.
what he said.
You asked him, you tell him the whole context of the situation, though. You asked him what he think about this young man, and he said, I'm okay. I said, I'm the truth. He's tripping. That's what happened.
It's so Anthony Edwards is obviously someone so confident in his ability that I can't possibly ever put him in my shoes. I've never been as confident in anything as Anthony Edwards is with everything that he could possibly do on this earth. It was to the point where I was wondering if he didn't know that was Barack Obama. Like if maybe he didn't know he was going to be there and he wasn't sure who else it was, because the way he was talking to him, I think even surprised Obama.
Yeah.
I think he even sounded a bit aggravated that Obama was questioning it to the other players. And I think the difference is Barack wasn't used to hearing that from Ant, but all the other players were. I mean, Durant, LeBron, they're used to hearing that talk from Anthony Edwards. They're used to hearing the bravado from Anthony Edwards, the confidence from Anthony Edwards. I think Barack Obama was truly somewhat stunned that around these OGs of Durant, LeBron, and the other older great players that Anthony Edwards was saying what he was saying. Anthony Edwards legitimately seemed perturbed that the former president was questioning him.
Yes, he was pissed off. I mean, think about what happened in that clip. Barack Obama just sort of beckoned LeBron James over. Like, hey, LeBron, I need to borrow you for a second to make this. That's the power that man wields on the smallest possible scale. But certainly in this room full of basketball players, and Anthony Edwards is sitting there, no, tell him the whole conversation. You're not going to put me out there like that. I'm nice. Is one of the most hilarious interactions that will come out of this entire thing here. Between that and Kevin Durant just consistently making everyone's life hell in this documentary, because that was the other thing. Kevin Durant seemed to be the star of the show on this. There's the viral clip of him breaking down in tears, talking about what the game of basketball means to him. But then there's the clips of him with the Serbian locker room in hell during their tilt during the Olympics. There's the clip of him making fun of France for thinking that any amount of continuity or team building is going to help them guard Steph Curry. And Kevin Durant, dad, who is someone that's name came up around the trade deadline here and came out and basically said after the fact, I didn't want to move again, which, God, the most human and understandable reason for anyone that has ever actually moved their stuff, even Kevin Durant among the super rich, for him to just say, yeah, it wasn't any beef with Golden State. I don't hate Draymond Green. I just didn't want to move again, and I'm kind of comfortable here. And shuffling from the 11th ranked team in the West to the 10th ranked team in the West just to go and have to move all my stuff doesn't seem like a great time. One of the most hilarious reasons given for a guy that seemed like he was kind of the star of this Olympic doc.
But do we believe him? Steve Kerr seemed to intimate that, he didn't want to be looked at as the guy who went to a team to kind of make it a great team and won a couple of the finals MVPs, and that maybe he didn't like Draymond, and Durant basically poo-pooed that, as you just said, I didn't want to move. Do we believe that? Or do we believe there was any kind of residual from him jumping ship to Golden State and helping them win titles?
I think it's probably D, all the above. Like, I'm sure there's some holdover from that. So much of that was so pronounced. Now, I know him and Draymond have been on podcasts and stuff and kind of talked it out since, and so I'm sure it's not true animus, but all that's probably baked into it. And again, what's the value prop, Dad? To go over there and be the 10th best team in the West as opposed to the 11th, yes, you would probably make them better, and in conjunction with, whatever that would have looked like. Now the Golden State Warriors have Jimmy Butler and Draymond's guaranteeing championships. But to that point, it is like for who, for what, all of that work, and to go back and deal with that if the upside's not what it used to be for you.
So I want to get sappy for a minute with the Olympics, and I want to hear Kevin Durant's emotional talk about playing for the Olympics, and then I want to comment on the other side. So will you play that?
So much hate in the world, too. Like, when people get to start laughing and joking for the game of ball, like, it's cool to me. So, like, it get me emotional, dog. My bad. Because it's crazy to see, because, like, it's crazy to see somebody say they travel so long to come see their favorite player play in the Olympics. They spend their money, they bring their whole family. Like, it's just dope to me. The game just saved my life, so it brought me and my family out of a lot of so I'm just, like, grateful for it. For real.
You know, and listen, the game means different things to different people. But he mentioned the Olympics and playing for the Olympics in more of that interview, and the honor to play for the Olympics. And that's what gets me. These are the greatest players in the world. And, you know, we're going through it with the Four Nations, right, in the hockey. And you hear the hockey players talk about when they put on the sweater of their nation, of what it means. These are NHL guys. There's the highest level of the NHL, but still what goes through their mind and the pride they have when they put on the sweater of their nation. And we're going to get, obviously, Canada versus USA Part 2 on Thursday at the TD Garden in Boston for the championship game. But listen, I have always said that. I mean, these are the OGs of basketball, LeBron and Durant and Curry, and the pride that they have to put on the U.S. jersey. Man, I would, as I said, I would have given anything to do that. And there's no comparative sport in football. Now there's going to be flag football, I get, but there was no comparative sport in football to go to the Olympics. It would have had to been another sport. I wrestled, but I wasn't good enough as a wrestler to even compete, to try and compete in the Olympics. My brother Bob was. My brother Bob actually would have tried out for the 80 Olympics. He was a great wrestler. But back then, he was in the NFL draft in '79, and you couldn't play two sports. Since you can now, they're different sports, but you couldn't then. So he would have had to sit out the NFL draft, go to the Olympics, which, by the way, we boycotted anyway, so that would have been a waste for him, and wait to go in the next year's draft. And he didn't want to do that, so he couldn't wrestle. That would have been the closest I came as a family to possibly having someone involved in the Olympics. And I can't express enough the joy that I would have had to slip on a jersey or to watch a relative of mine compete in the Olympics. So I think it's cool when you hear these guys talk about what the Olympics mean and and really not just the Olympics, but representing your country in world championships and whatever it may be, but representing your country and just the different feeling of pulling on a USA jersey instead of just your team's jersey.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting in the light of what people want to try and do with the All-Star games now, because it seems like international competition, in light of what we've seen with the Four Nation, is something that a lot of people are looking at, obviously outside of the Pro Bowl where you wouldn't be able to do this, but for all the other sports and saying, hey, we saw how sick the World Baseball Classic was. We've seen how Four Nations has gone. Why would that not work for Major League Baseball and potentially for the NBA, where this U.S. versus the world game is getting more and more steam? Dad, I do wonder, though, with hockey, I mean, those guys are just built different. Like, I understand people want to do this with the NBA and hockey for all sorts of cultural reasons all the time, but there is no denying, even between hockey and football guys, they're different. Their mentality overall and the way they approach that sport is so different that, yeah, anytime you throw the kits on and make them go country versus country, especially U.S. versus Canada, there's so much tension built into that. Obviously, the current geopolitical situation adds fuel to that fire. But those guys are always going to go out there and play harder than most. I do wonder if with basketball, even if we do this and we know it's only the NBA All-Star game and it's not the Olympics and it's not the World Basketball Classic, if we get the same level of effort, it would probably get closer, and it's the next logical solution. I'd be more interested in tuning in as a viewer. There's no doubt. You would have the hook in me a lot more than this 14 tournament they just trotted out. But I do wonder if still you would get the basketball player mentality to shift all that much.
I think the furthest the NBA can go before they just, stick a fork in it, it's done, is international, which they've done, is international game against U.S. and one-on-ones, right? Of which Kyrie Irving can't seem to wait for that, the opportunity to go be in a one-on-one contest. But I think that's about as far as the NBA could go. is an international game. And I agree with you. I don't think it holds the same because, again, it's international. The four nations is actually nations. It's not a conglomerate of international players on one team like the NBA would be. It's a bunch of different countries on one team going against the U.S., not like Sweden, Finland, Canada, USA, 4 separate nations representing. So while I agree it may be a little better, I still don't think it'll rise to what everybody is looking for. I think the best chance you have is a one-on-one tournament.
Yeah, and again, I think fixing the All-Star game is an overblown problem. David Dennis Jr. pointed out, we rose-colored glasses the hell out of this entire event, and it's never, I think, actually been this important. It's a fan exposure event, and fans get plenty of exposure in other areas from the NBA at this point in time. But that being said, country-on-country stuff, inherently interesting, and I don't know what that says about us internally, and maybe we need to examine some of those things, but when it comes to the world of sports, that's tried and true, and especially in the NBA, Dad, where remember in the last Olympic cycle, we had all this stuff about world champions, and it really did seem like there was extra effort. I mean, you got Nikola Jokic to appear like he wanted to try, and the video footage of him frustrated in the locker room as they were all flummoxed by Durant. If you can spark that kind of passion out of that guy, it does seem like our best opportunity. So if we get to next year's All-Star game, I will be stunned if it's not Team USA versus the world or some combination of one-on-one. Coming up the next hour, I'll be stunned if you all don't have a good time. Katie Nolan going to drop by and get casual with us next on Gojo and Golic.
Welcome back to Gojo and Golic. The Lakers host the Hornets tonight as the NBA returns to action after the All-Star break. Now, this is a makeup game from January. It was originally postponed due to the California wildfires, and the Lakers look a lot different now. Luka's in the mix. LA could see center Mark Williams for the first time since they tried to trade for him earlier this month, and the deal got nixed due to a failed physical. LeBron also expected to play after sitting out the All-Star break and game. The Lakers are 12-point favorites in this one. LA has covered cover the spread in each of their last 5 home games and 7 of their last 8 games and have gone over the total points line. We will be back with more Gojo and Golic after this. Katie Nolan joining the program.
Hoping to talk to our friend Katie Nolan, the host of Casuals, a phenomenal sports podcast over at SiriusXM. In just a couple of moments here, Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., and Jesse Cofield back for hour number 2 of Gojo and Golic. And Dad, before we get to that, little tease from Howard Beck in the NBA as we're all still reeling in the Luka Doncic Mavs trade to the Los Angeles Lakers about the star that could be next on here. Been a while, I feel like, since we've had a headline around Ja Morant, which honestly is great. It means Ja stayed off Instagram, which is the most important thing any of us can do, but especially Ja Morant, who had a penchant for flashing guns on Instagram Live. But it sounds like Howard Beck, at least according to him, believes that what he's heard from executives around the league is that Ja's a name to keep an eye on this summer, especially if the Grizzlies go the way of an early playoff exit this year, despite all the regular season success so far. Do you think this is going to be something that happens more often now? Did the Mavericks all of a sudden pop the top on something?
Listen, the Mavericks made it show that nobody is safe, right? If you can trade Luka, the biggest young superstar in the game. I mean, that really kind of does pop the top off of it. But I just find it hard to believe Memphis and what they're building, second in the conference right now, trading away and starting over without Ja Morant. Now, as you mentioned, he's not on Instagram Live getting himself suspended anymore. He's just having injuries that are keeping him off the court. He's played in 32 of 56 games this year, 41 games since the start of the 23 season. He's never played more than 63 games in a season. So for a young player, that's not good. already being nicked up that much and missing time. He's got 3 years left on his deal, 39, 42, and 44 million. So I just wonder, if Memphis thinks we're paying this guy a lot of money to not be on the court for actual basketball reasons, not anything else. It has been. I hadn't realized he had missed this many games. Memphis is one of those teams that you kind of talk about, but not a bunch. And they're second in the conference because, listen, we're giving Oklahoma City the love that they're probably going to represent. It's like them in the field. And then it's the talk of Denver and Memphis and Houston and how well they're playing before you get to the Lakers. But I don't think Memphis gets enough talk for being second in the conference. I don't know why that is, but it has made me look more at the number of games John Morant has missed.
Yeah, I think it's weird because Memphis was the shiny new toy for a while. Like, Memphis was appearing to be on the trajectory of where OKC is now years ago when you had them playing against them playing against Golden State and Steph Curry at a time where that meant something, and going toe-to-toe with them and not looking like they were scared and feeling like that. And then all of the off-court John Morant stuff combined with some poorly timed injuries to that team kind of derailed what we thought that trajectory was. And now that they're actually giving us more of that, for this to come up, and again, it's one person in Howard Beck coming out and saying this, but it's still at a time period now, and I think this is kind of what it is too. We've joked about this with some of the NFL players that have gone and voiced their desire to be traded. Myles Garrett, chief among them. All of this comes at a time where everything feels more possible because of what has happened with Luka Doncic. And that sort of rattled what we believed about star players acquiring and continuing to hold on to these players that put butts in seats, that are very good on the court. And in Ja's case, incredibly visually exciting to watch. Like, he's just an enjoyable basketball player visually in so many ways. So we've got that going on one side there in the NBA. On the other side, I believe our friend Katie Nolan just popped into the chat here. You can check her out, Casuals, again, the phenomenal podcast that has had many great guests featured recently here, most notably me, and I won't name any others there. Katie, how you doing?
Good. Uh-oh.
Oh, we can't hear Katie. Can we fix that on our end? This is our fault. Yeah, no, it's not Katie's fault here. This is our fault here. Again, Casuals, sports but chill, wherever you get your podcast here. I will name some of the guests to fill here. Jay Gruden, not the Jay Gruden that some sports fans might think of, but Jay Gruden, the writer and the comedian, the most recent episode there. She had Heidi Gardner on, noted Chiefs fan, who told some great stories about that run, including one of the cutest things I've ever heard, which is that in her calendar, she would put in the Chiefs games these like motivational notes that she would write to all of them. So Katie's going to log out and try and log back in, Dad, but it really is a wonderful podcast and everybody should listen to it.
Yeah, hopefully I'll be a guest on it someday. Katie and I have a special bond, a special relationship that we'd like to continue.
Yeah, she did bring that up on the podcast that I did with her there. So again, efforting the technical.
Oh, I meant the ice fishing that we did. Where there was one. It was the Super Bowl in Minnesota, was it not? Where me, you, and her we actually went ice fishing, and she actually caught the biggest. She got the lunker. She caught the biggest fish as well. But that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, those are simpler times and many, many years ago. So we are popping her back in the chat.
Hello.
Anyone is here.
There
she's here. We can hear her. Hi, Katie. How you doing?
Hi, I'm good. Good vamping. Thank you for vamping about my podcast.
No, absolutely. It's easy to vamp about. How's it been being back at work? Like, what's this been like for you? Are you enjoying the experience of talking to your friends about sports again?
Yes. That part, obviously fun and easy. The work part, I hate to say, I got really used to some time off. It was really nice to not have a job. I mean, it was bad in other ways, right? But it was really cool in terms of free time. And so, I'm sleeping less, which is ultimately probably for the better. But I do miss it.
The trials and tribulations of having a job, of having free time, and then saying, "Oh, okay, do I like my free time more? Or do I want to actually have a job?" So that's the teeter-totter that you balance on, huh?
Yeah, they say work-life
Katie,
balance, but for me, it's like sleep-work balance, basically. Sorry, Mike, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, though, you're coming back to this, and I appreciate the whole effort of the podcast is to take a more casual approach to viewing sports. But we're in a time of year where I thought of you, and the reason we reached out, because we're coming up on Major League Baseball season. And when we used to talk to you on the show about baseball season, it was in your role as an analyst. Like, you had to go so hyper-specific for a while. And I'm wondering now for you, as you approach baseball season, which is always this thing that I know you've enjoyed as a fan here, how much different and more enjoyable it is now to get to watch this, especially because it seems like your team might actually be good again, too.
I know. Did you hear we got Alex Bregman, which is interesting because we have a third baseman already. So that should be fun to see how that's going to go. I love the signing. Love that we're spending money on guys, but would also love if we could do it at positions, that weren't already filled on our roster. But no, with baseball season coming up, I'm excited. The thing I'm most excited for is day games. Like, I really do think it's underappreciated that, like, in the middle of the day, especially in this, like, I know we're at the end of the work from home era, but I know a lot of people are still working from home. Like, day baseball is the perfect background. You can just put on an MLB network, or if you still have cable like me, or I'm sure you could find like a specific game you want, and you can just watch a random game in the middle of the day that counts. And so it, like, matters. Middle of the day stakes. I feel like that's the underrated thing about baseball season.
Or you go to the game and it's day drinking. I mean, what's better than that, right?
Nothing.
What's better than a good darty? As far as baseball overall, we have this talk now. The CBA is up at the end of 26. And we continue to talk. As I said, I've talked about it well before you guys were in this business, the haves and the have-nots. Do you actually see it getting better in the next CBA?
You mean about, like, the fact that, like, the Dodgers have every single player who's ever wanted to play baseball, and then everybody else is struggling to also have people who want to play baseball? I don't know. I don't know about any of that. Captain Mike, you know that that's not my bag, a CBA. I hope they figure it out. That's their job. Make it so that everybody can have good players and one team can't just buy everybody. And then we all just have to hear, an exciting signing. Where could they go? And then the answer is always, and they signed with the Dodgers.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, so is that something that as a fan of baseball, you look at and go, this is an actual problem for how I enjoy the sport?
I mean, how much of it is just me being annoyed by a team that's really good? I don't know. It's probably the majority of it. And just truly the frustration and the wind out of your sails when you're following a free agent or and then it's just always Dodgers. It's like there's never a surprise or a reveal anymore. It's just kind of like the assumed ending. And then maybe sometimes something crazy happens, but most times it goes there. That annoys me as a fan. It annoys me also as a fan because we've lost. Like, Red Sox have gone to the Dodgers. Like, it seems to be this, like, gravitational pull for a team that's, like, cool. I'm glad you guys have all this, but perhaps maybe some of us could also have some.
See, it's weird to hear a Boston fan with the amount of parades that you have had in your lifetime that you are now complaining that you don't have the talent on your team. You've had enough parades in 3 lifetimes. Time to let others have some.
Never enough. You know that. I always want more. They're always fun. They're always the best times of my life. Why not more?
That is true. More parades. It's probably an easy platform to run on for all of us, as people seem to like parades here. Katie, have you gotten into, has the Four Nations hockey tournament risen to the interest level that's brought you in?
Oh, yeah. Look, we're talking in every sport about how do you fix the All-Star game? How do you fix the All-Star game? Obviously, I mean, hockey has sort of this built-in nations situation where it's, multiple nations sending so many of their players to the NHL, and so they can represent their different nations. I know we've talked about in basketball, it would have to be more of like a USA versus the world situation, but Four Nations is so fun. Like, it is one of the first times in a while that we're seeing, like, USA and Canada compete on an international level. So there's already this heightened intensity because of that. Then add in the fact that our president keeps saying that entire country is going to be our 51st state, which Doesn't make any sense. That would be a gigantic state. And they're booing our anthem. And so there's this, like, the intensity of the USA-Canada rivalry in hockey is like reminiscent of my childhood. Like, this is in my blood. We grew up, you know, I've always heard that Canada is such a nice, they're always so nice. They always say sorry. But I was born to square up with Canada. I was made for this. So I think that the NHL, at least this year, I don't know if this will work this way every year, but I think they've fixed their All-Star game because I am hyped for the final on Thursday. And it's in Boston. So I kind of want to go, but I think that doesn't make sense. So I probably won't, but spiritually I'll be there.
And they're going to let the NHL players, they're going to break for the Olympics now as well. And I think that's the right move as well.
I agree with you, as always.
Katie, before we let you go out of here, do you think that would work in the NBA too? That was the debate we were having, if the NBA's All-Star game could be saved by that.
I think the USA versus the world concept is interesting. I know a lot of people were saying that the world team would be pretty stacked. And I think that's true. And I think, you know, okay, then let's see what can happen. Let's see if USA could beat the world. I think, like, if the odds are stacked against you in sports, that doesn't mean it's a bad idea. That means, like, let's see what happens. Like, the odds were stacked against Finland and Sweden in this, and they didn't make it to the final. So obviously the odds worked out the way that they would. But I don't know. I think it could be fun. They got to do something. That NBA All-Star was...
That's the official analysis. The NBA All-Star game was poop noise. You can catch more of that wonderful poop noise and Katie Nolan and all her fabulous friends over at Casuals, a SiriusXM podcast. Katie, great catching up with you, buddy. Congratulations on the podcast. I'm glad everything's going so well. You're amazing.
Thank you so much. I love you guys. You're the best.
Sorry you have to get up again from sleep.
Thank you.
Yes, our next task as we run on more parades for people in sports is just more sleep in general for all of us here, which is probably a good idea in that regard. But yeah, Dad, I really think the Four Nations and Shane O'Brien from Missing Curfew is going to join us and kind of preview that for the episode tomorrow. I do think that overall in the entertainment value, I saw the get-in price for tickets is nearing $1,000 for that. The ratings were as high as some Stanley Cup final games from recent history. Like, they've really tapped into something that is probably going to be able to sustain them for quite some time. And for the NHL, who kind of has run into this problem of, hey, sort of like Major League Baseball, how do we market ourselves? How do we break through, especially among the North American sports here? They have found a way to do it and capture both nations' attentions as we head into Thursday's tilt. We'll be back with more next here on Gojo and Golic.
Welcome back to Gojo and Golic. Jesse Cofield, Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. here with you. Spring training opens across baseball this week. So let's take a look at some of the bigger headlines coming out of camps. So first baseman Vlad Guerrero Jr. and the Toronto Blue Jays have failed to come to terms on a contract extension by that Monday night deadline, paving the way for free agency for this guy. He said, they have their numbers, I have my numbers. And he said that they weren't close to coming on terms. Meanwhile, GM Ross Atkins said the Blue Jay offers were, quote, very aggressive. So guys, kind of seems like nobody wants to be in Toronto is the theme here.
Yeah, it seems like because Toronto doesn't want to pony up the money necessary to make that happen. Like, that's been the consistent through line that we talked about, Dad, between, whether or not it was ever real with Shohei Ohtani, certainly Juan Soto and the offers there. Toronto loves making it sound like they're in the mix, but then not ultimately able to pay what's necessary. They'd be great in horseshoes and hand grenades, but unfortunately that doesn't help you retain talent in Major League Baseball. And so for this organization where, remember, Jesse just mentioned Ross Atkins and Mark Shapiro, the current GM and president, they inherited Vladdy. They inherited Vlad Guerrero Jr. from Alex Anthopoulos, and now it appears they're going to be the reason why he is not going to be a Toronto Blue Jay in a year's time.
So Guerrero said he plans to cut off talks and play out the season as an impending free agent, but he also says he won't close the door on a realistic offer from the Blue Jays. But listen, he's treating free agency the way free agency was meant to be treated. He said, listen, I want to be here. I want to be a Blue Jay for the rest of my career, but it's free agency. It's a business. So I'm going to have to listen to 29 more teams, and they're going to have to compete for that. That's free agency. That's why you fight and get free agency. So you can, when you're a good player, you can shop your wares around and get in hopefully a bidding war for your services. This is the perfect definition of free agency. Yeah, okay, I'd like to sign back with Toronto. We'll see. We'll see if the numbers are competitive with what he's going to get offered, if he truly wants to stay in Toronto or not. If they have an even money offer from another team, then you'll find out. But this is exactly what free agency is supposed to be. It is. It's a business. It is a business. You get to test your wares on the free market and see what it'll bring.
Well, I just think it's cool because we rarely get young players that get all the way to true free agency. And seeing this with Vladdy, who will be 27 when this happens. And I'm with you. Once you get close, like, that's the Blue Jays' real error. Ken Rosenthal did a great piece on this in The Athletic about the amount of opportunities Toronto had to not mess this up. And if they had gone and extended him back when the Padres extended Fernando Tatis Jr., you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars in saving and making sure that one of the young talented players in this league, and a name player, right? I think there's also that. Obviously, part of it is you had his father, and so you came in with the lineage and the bloodline to sell people. You have the fact that he's a hoss. Like, we got a big guy in the mix, a 6'2", 245-pounder who hits for power. All of that's a great sell and great for a fan base to stay active and engaged here. But, Dad, like with most situations we talk about in sports, when you don't go out and get ahead of this stuff, well, yeah, of course a young guy who finished last season on a tear probably says, yeah, I want to go see what I'm worth. There's a ton of money out there. I just saw Juan Soto get more money than God, and while you probably won't get that for a first baseman with his athletic profile, you're still in line to get probably close to $40 million a year, and that's cool as hell.
Absolutely. Absolutely. He's doing absolutely the right thing. He's doing absolutely what a players' union would want him to do, is to go test the open market for the pure definition of free agency. So and you're right. Toronto letting it get to this point is certainly on them, though we don't know what talks there have been. Maybe Vlad just flat out didn't want to sign and wanted to get to free agency. And if he did, there's nothing you can do about it.
Well, again, but we know the recent history of Toronto has been close but no cigar. And so I'm willing to bet that, yeah, their offer probably wasn't going to approach what teams like, and especially when you hear that immediately after this headline pops up, the teams expected to be in the market for his services are the Yankees and the Mets. The teams that just finished bidding on Juan Soto in the Yankees and the Mets. The teams with the deep pockets and the billionaire owner we just talked about in Steve Cohen. None of this is surprising that they would go and outbid the team in Toronto. that has been consistently outbid for star services in the last number of years. And so it will be interesting. Again, Vladdy, a dip after his 2021 season, which was by far his best year as a pro, where he was a runner-up for the MVP. The last couple of seasons, the dip, but then the back half of last year goes on this tear again. He's extremely durable. He has played in all 60 games of the shortened 2020 season, and then has averaged 159 games a year since. He's never been on the injured list. So combine all of that with a guy who, again, underlying power numbers that generally bode well for your success all seem to be there, Jesse, for Vladdy as he gets set to go and grab that net and catch that beautiful butterfly.
All right, well, let's move on and talk about Mike Trout. So Mike Trout arrived on Sunday to training camp. He basically spoke with his coaches. They determined that they are going to change his position. He's switching up positions for you. They're moving him from center field to right field in an effort to preserve his body and keep him healthy. Guys, not like a huge surprise. It makes me feel very old to hear this, but I mean, his injuries have limited him to 266 of a potential 648 games over the last 4 seasons. Here is what Trout had to say about the decision.
Kind of just threw everything on the table, as in what's best for me. Body-wise, keep me on the field. Came to the conclusion that I'm going to go to right field. Like it. Try it out. See where it goes.
Man, it makes me feel so old to hear this.
Yeah, because again, this is a move. We'll talk about the other positional change that's got a little sass with it in Boston. This one, Dad, does seem to be wholly about this position will put him at less risk for injury for a guy who in 2021 dealt with a calf strain, in 2022 dealt with back spasms, in 2023 had a fractured bone in his wrist, and then in 2024 had a torn meniscus in his knee. So Mike Trout, just a shell of the guy we used to know in terms of availability. Again, what Jesse described there, and I know everyone went with this comp the other day, but even makes Joel Embiid blush in terms of the availability of a guy who was a star that waved goodbye to his counterpart in Shohei Ohtani and watched him immediately enjoy what life could have always been on the outside.
Also, it kind of reminds you of when you have singular or a great or one or two great players in baseball. It doesn't guarantee you anything, right? Because we're gonna kind of like with Oklahoma City when they had Harden, Westbrook, and Durant on the team, right? We every now and then we go, wow, those guys were on the same team. Every now and then we're going to go, wow, Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani were on the same team, and they didn't win squat. They didn't win a thing, and they were two of the great players in baseball. For Trout, how it's ending, he's 33 years old. 4 of the last 5 seasons, he didn't play more than 82 games, save for the 22 season where he played 119. He's one of the great hitters, one of the great players that we've seen play, and it's just unfortunately ending poorly. We'll see what the move to right field does if it preserves him, but we've seen injuries obviously limit his time, and we're past the great player and in the MVP race for what he has been. And he's a guy who, as long as he's with the Angels, they're never going to do anything. So it's going to be one of the great Hall of Fame careers where it never led to anything, unfortunately, in the postseason.
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is the case. He chose comfort and money and time, Jesse, and now he gets to ride that out in Los Angeles. And, well, not really Los Angeles, as everyone out here knows.
Yeah, Anaheim. Anaheim, how far is that away from actual LA? But, guys, let's talk about a guy who is solely focused on postseason and winning big. So Juan Soto said a factor in his decision to sign a 15-year, $765 million contract with the Mets was the belief that the Mets are better set up to win more than any of the other clubs that pursued him during free agency, including the Yankees. Now, Yankees star Aaron Judge, who reportedly was sending Juan Soto some texts in the offseason, trying to sway him a certain way, he responded to these claims at spring training. Listen to this.
That's his opinion. He can say what he wants. I definitely disagree with him, but I wasn't too surprised by it. I think that's where he wanted to be. I think that's where it was best for him and his family, and you got a pretty nice deal over there. So I think you can't say no to that. But I'm happy for him. He got a good deal. He's going to be in a great spot. It's going to be great having him in town. We're going to be battling back and forth for quite a few years. So I'm definitely happy for him.
I mean, what a rivalry in New York, right, guys? But also that partnership between them only lasted 1 year with the Yankees, but it was pretty historically good for both of them during that time. So no surprise that Aaron Judge might be just like he's happy for him, but maybe a teeny bit salty that he didn't sign with the Yankees.
Yeah, competition for some of the better dinner reservations in the city just went up since now they won't be going together to a lot of those same spots here. I can't even name the restaurants because A, I didn't never live in New York long enough to know them, and B, I don't exist in a tax bracket anywhere near those guys, and I'm sure they probably eat at way cooler places than I can even comprehend. But, Dad, two of the more underrated words in sports that become viable because of this and having these two teams good at the same time, Subway Series. Love a good Subway Series. Love the two teams in New York being not only competitive, but on the one side with Steve Cohen too, like bloodthirsty. The fact that you have an owner that was at one time and kind of still is a bleep poster online makes this all riveting and is all a net positive for baseball fans. Well, I guess not baseball fans outside of the state of New York, but if you're a casual fan coming in from the national level, this is good for all of us.
Yeah, and listen, they put themselves in good company as far as teammates hitting over 40 home runs in a season. They joined Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig, who did it 3 times, and Mickey Mantle and Roger Maris, who did it 1 time. It's pretty nice company to be in. But for Juan Soto to say that he feels he's going to be on a team that has a better chance to win, I mean, you're dealing with the Dodgers. You're dealing not only with the Dodgers, but in your own division, you're dealing with the Phillies and the Braves. Where, you know, in the American League, I mean, the Yankees, you're dealing with Baltimore had over 90 wins. The Guardians, my Cleveland Guardians had over 90 wins. But, I mean, the depth in the National League seems to be a little bit deeper. And, oh, by the way, yeah, you're dealing with the reigning World Series champs and the Dodgers. So I don't know about the Mets in a position to win more than the Yankees, given the different divisions.
All right, guys, before we get out of here, I got to finish with this one really quick. The Boston Red Sox, obviously we talked about this with Katie Nolan, signed Alex Bregman. Now, he plays third base. This is a bit of a dilemma because the Red Sox already have an established third baseman, Rafael Devers. So he spoke to reporters and he said, third base is my position. It's what I've played. I don't know what their plans are. I know we had a conversation. I made it clear kind of what my desires were, and whatever happens from here, I don't know. So he basically said, that's my spot and I'm not giving it up.
Yeah, Dad, it sounds like promises were made, and Alex Cora kind of hinted at that. Chaim Bloom might have told him a bunch of things. The problem for Rafael Devers is he's not a very good third baseman, and Alex Bregman is good at third base. And so I'd imagine the Boston Red Sox, in an effort to be good again and excite their fans outside of just a documentary, probably going to put the good third baseman in at third base, and Rafael Devers is going to have to figure out something else at this point.
Devers, when asked if he was open to moving to designated hitter, he didn't wait for his interpreter to translate before providing his answer, no. So, I mean, again, if he is asked to move, if Bregman is going to play third base, it'll be interesting of what Devers is going to do. Will he be a problem in the clubhouse? Will he succumb and just go and be a designated hitter? Interesting situation. You're right about promises being made and maybe everybody not being involved in the conversation.
Since 2017, he has committed 141 errors. Eugenio Suarez, who played 1,059 games compared to the 951 of Devers, is next in line with 87. So if that's the backdrop of all this, and your team hasn't been that good as of late, I don't know how you can come out and talk tough when it's Alex freaking Bregman that just walked in, that everyone here is jacked up about and plays the position at a much higher level, I believe a Gold Glove level last year.
Yeah, and Alex Cora said promises made to Devers about the position were from a former regime. So that tells you exactly where this is going. It's Devers that's gonna be like, dude, you're gonna be a designated hitter. You're not playing third base anymore, so accept it.
Yeah, it sounds good to come out with this show of force here, but again, when the legs to stand on sound like what we just read to you there. Ultimately, I think this is going to be one of those battles that he is going to lose because in an age of player empowerment, not everybody can get their way all the time. Speaking of, coming up next, let's talk about the age of player empowerment hitting the WNBA and how we truly measure a superstar here. Can a player's worth ever be accurately quantified at the level of someone like Caitlin Clark? Next here on Gojo and Golic. Breaking news from ESPN NFL insider Adam Schefter. The Chargers have been selected as the NFL's designated team for the second ever regular season game in Sao Paulo, Brazil, as a part of the 2025 international games here. Those include the Chargers Week 1 in Brazil, the Jets and Browns 1 game each at London's Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, the Jags in London at Wembley, the Colts in Berlin, Germany, the Dolphins in Madrid, and the Steelers in Dublin, Ireland here. Dad, great news for Chargers fans since the last team that got a win in Sao Paulo ended up winning the Super Bowl in the Philadelphia Eagles last year. So kudos to them. Hope they have a good time.
One of the most non-shocking things is Jacksonville playing in London. Everybody thinks that we'll be their new home someday. I do not agree with that, but them playing in London is about as normal as can be. And, of course, Dublin, Ireland being added to the NFL list of international games. That has been a college destination for teams, including Notre Dame a couple of times, a few times. But that's always was a nice trip. I know when I took, me and your mother took out there to watch you guys play, and then a couple of years ago went as well. That's a nice trip. But the NFL is going to keep adding international games as long as and it doesn't seem like they're letting travel get in the way, because Australia is going to be on the docket pretty soon. So, I mean, it is they have got to figure out. I mean, obviously, sometimes they're putting the bye weeks the next week, which you would have to do, because some of these trips, my God, I mean, the flights, the length of the flights it can just be ridiculous.
Yeah, we say they have to figure it out. My response would be, why? None of us are going to care enough to stop watching or do anything. The NFL knows that. That's why they're going to jam an 18th game down everyone's throat and continue to do all this. So won't be surprised in the least when there is no clear-cut solution for that. Hopefully the players can get that done for themselves here, because, yeah, that's going to get dicey real quick. Speaking of dicey, Dad, I thought this was interesting. There was obviously an article coming out about Caitlin Clark and her agent pointing out that they're never going to be able to accurately pay her what she's worth around the WNBA, considering what she's done. An economist at Indiana University, interviewed by the Indianapolis Star, recently calculated that Clark was responsible for $36 million in economic impact on the city and almost 27% of the league's economic activity in 2024. So she's built like that, and she's going to make $78,000 next year in the WNBA. We know all their salaries are going to go up because they just signed a new TV deal that's $2.2 billion. And so everything's about to get better for everyone across the board in that league. But it is this constant reminder, Dad, in the world of sports, and even especially in basketball, where the NBA doesn't have a cap necessarily, but they've approached one and they've got supermax deals where there's a limit on what stars can make, that players like her, players like LeBron James are always going to be playing for less than they're actually worth on the market.
Well, I mean, and plus the WNBA, they haven't been making great money, and they're starting to realize those gains. I mean, the disparity or the difference in salary is for a rookie a little over $64,000 to the top players making $241,000. Now, the Unrivaled League is paying the players an average of like $220,000, so that's basically can over double their salaries from the WNBA. But really, I mean, in the last few years, the WNBA started jumping in attendance and viewership. You mentioned the media rights deal. It went from roughly $60 million a year to $200 million a year. Remember, the NBA had been giving them an influx of money every year. But the WNBA is starting to stand on its own, and we should see salaries go up accordingly. But that's always going to be when you get not just Caitlin Clark, but it was a great rookie class led by Caitlin Clark. The disparity in what she actually gets paid. Now, she makes off the court money, which in the millions, which is great. But we're talking about actually pay for what you're playing. And I mean, she's going to make, like you said, $78,000. When you talk about LeBron James or Patrick Mahomes or other great players in other sports, they're getting paid handsomely to improve the league. Right? To put butts in seats or whatever, when you're making $40, $50, $60 million a year. At some point in the NBA, I think they're talking about SGA, whenever he does his deal in a few years, will be the first person to make like $1 million a game, like $81 million a year. Well, I mean, the low pay in the WNBA, we should start to see it rise now, but the disparity, it just hit. Like I said, the WNBA has been rising, but it took a meteoric jump with Caitlin Clark and this class and the metrics for it. So the disparity of what she makes to what she brings looks astronomical.
Well, but it kind of shows you where it's all going. And like in general, people with money don't like to lose it, and usually aren't, they're not always the smartest people in the world, but when this many people are pouring money into women's sports, you can generally kind of see the signs. Like you got the WLL in lacrosse, the PWHL in hockey. Obviously, the WNBA is something that's enjoyed a great rise, and all of these areas receiving added interest, more visibility, more funding, and people wanting to buy in. I saw Paul Rabel on yesterday saying it's a legitimate business opportunity for a lot of people now who see where this is going and are trying to get in early because, Dad, we see everywhere else, like the NBA, you're putting pieces of the team up for sale. Private equity is buying into small parts of certain leagues and things like this. There are very few other leagues so saturated that you can come in and actually get a piece of it big enough to go and make money back on it eventually, as we see these valuations constantly rise for the best appreciating assets in sports. So women's sports are a great place to go with that. It is interesting to watch the growing pains in certain areas, though, because we talk about all the time, especially in the NBA, player empowerment. You can get what you want, bang loud enough on the table, and things can happen. Did you see former Notre Dame star Marina Mabrey, who last time on Dragon Ball Z got traded in the middle of the season from the Chicago Sky to the Connecticut Sun, and then watched everybody leave around her in the Sun, now went out and requested a trade that got denied, and her agent is trying to raise hell for her right now, saying, quote, "In this current age of women's empowerment and support of players, the Sun threatening to force Marina Mabrey to play for them after her trade request is mind-boggling. Why would anyone try and force someone to play on their team when they don't want to be there? It's counterproductive in a ton of ways, and everyone we've spoken to is perplexed about how they're handling Marina after trading away Hall of Fame caliber players." That all sounds fine and good. The Sun do have a business operation to run, and unfortunately, they have decided that, hey, we want to build around her, and while that sucks in a number of ways, we see this happen all over the place, and kind of this pendulum swinging back in sports where fewer and fewer teams are willing to immediately acquiesce to the demand of players, and so she's going to have to get real creative if she really wants to force the Sun's hand before the season starts on this.
Yep. It is interesting to see where the WNBA is going and how it's growing. And really in all sports, who are the marquee players? LeBron James, the Chiefs with Mahomes and Kelsey, obviously. In baseball, Shohei Ohtani, easily the star. Hockey is going to have kind of a break-in moment this year, right? I mean, we thought one of the untouchable records was Wayne Gretzky's goal scored. I mean, Alex Ovechkin is 15 goals away from breaking the record. So hockey all of a sudden getting a glow up with the Four Nations, which will end on Thursday, but really being in the news. Alex Ovechkin, I mean, you're going to talk about break-in moments to his games, breaking what was thought to be maybe an unbreakable record, which I'm still somewhat stunned it's going to be. But yeah, Alex Ovechkin is 15 goals away, 16 goals away from breaking Wayne Gretzky's goal-scoring record.
Yeah, I mean, listen, hockey's had stars like Ovechkin and Crosby for years was captivating for audience when those two were at the top of their game in this league. And now you've got Connor McDavid, Austin Matthews, all these young prodigies that have continued to break into the league. Major League Baseball's got Ohtani. The NFL, like you mentioned, has had the Chiefs and the Mahomes-Kelsey thing that's supernovaed around Taylor Swift. And basketball's always been a game where the personalities have maybe even been more captivating than the on-court action. But now we're starting to see Caitlin Clark leading the charge for the W, catching up in a hurry, and seeing the valuation so far outpace the salaries, I think does tell you where this is going right now, provided they can navigate some of the growing pains that come with every league that goes through this jump that we've seen over the years. They seem really well positioned based on all the money that's coming in other areas around these women to see that seep into the league and now start to change the way we talk about player salaries moving forward with that group there. So an exciting time. I mean, for all women's sports. Again, the W is going to be the focus because, like you said, Caitlin Clark's the tip of the spear here, but it does seem like the rest of the ships and that rising tide steadily rushing to meet them there. We're going to rush to meet you at the finish with this, that, and third next on Gojo and Golic. All right, let's finish off the way we always do. This, that, and the third. 3 quick ones send you off into the rest of the day. Download, subscribe, rate, and review our show. Leave us a 5-star rating. Go ahead and subscribe and hit the bell over at the Gojo and Golic YouTube channel as well. Thank you to our guest today, Katie Nolan, host of the Casuals podcast at SiriusXM. You missed any of that interview, check it out wherever you get that podcast or right here as soon as we're done with the show on the YouTube channel here. And guys, let's start off with a great reminder why eating salad is almost always a mistake, as we had a freak injury that almost cost one Dodgers pitcher everything. Dustin May said he was pretty close to joining his team's 2024 World Series run until a complete freak accident required emergency surgery for a serious tear in his esophagus last July. May, whose 2023 season had a flexor tendon issue and Tommy John surgery, was rehabbing at the Dodgers Camelback Ranch facility in Arizona when he went out to dinner on July 10th and got a piece of lettuce stuck in his throat, which caused a serious tear in his esophagus, he told the LA Times. It required emergency surgery that night and derailed his hopes of returning to the Dodgers bullpen. Dad, just another reason you've stayed away from salad all these years.
Listen, that and the real reason when you have like a cut in your lip and the salad dressing hits that cut and just how much it burns. That's just, there's plenty of reasons for not eating a salad. I've never heard of this. I mean, a piece of lettuce tearing the esophagus? I mean, what kind of lettuce are you eating? And this was a pretty serious deal. He says he doesn't think he would have made it through the night if he didn't have the surgery. I mean, that's unbelievable. I have never heard, you heard of food getting stuck in the throat and someone choking, and you know have to use the Heimlich maneuver, but a piece of lettuce tearing the esophagus, I thought the worst you can get is a salad dressing burn on a cut lip. This takes it to a new height, Jesse.
Yeah, I'm a little skeptical here. I mean, was it something in the salad? Because something hard in the salad? I feel like a piece of lettuce, how could it do that much damage? I'm with you, Senior. I don't know.
Yeah.
It said it led to a highly uncommon food impaction, which perforated the esophagus tube. And now, after going through surgery that required 6 months to recover, he's got a scar from his lower chest down to his stomach that he's got to wear for the rest of his life after that. So the most violent piece, I mean, but seriously, glad dude is okay. It obviously sucks with the timing of that in general, but certainly a lot bigger fish to fry for him that certainly won't involve salad anytime soon. So glad to see that, and joins a really inauspicious list of Dustin's injured by food. Going all the way back, our producer Slate's found Dustin Penner of the NHL got injured back in 2012 while eating a stack of pancakes. He said he woke up fine, sat down to eat it, locked right up. It never happened before. I couldn't stand, and it was and so my wife helped me get dressed. Then I drove to the rink and hoped they could do some magic. They looked at me and said, "Go home." Apparently, it's one of those mysterious things where you can throw out your back from sneezing, and so I just leaned over to dip in some pancakes and threw out his back. So eating, especially in the wrong moments as an athlete, can jar things through. It's amazing that we have survived this long.
I do like that in the midst of talking about a devastating injury that he complimented his wife. He said, "I just leaned over to dip into some delicious pancakes that my wife made." He gave her the credit of making delicious pancakes. That's a pro move right there. Threw his back out. That's the main story, but did get in the fact that his wife made some delicious pancakes.
Solid wife guy. Always appreciate that move. So Dustin's in athletics out there. Guard yourself the next time you sit down at the table with a fork and knife here. Jesse, let's get to that and why we should all guard ourselves going forward.
Yeah, it might not even matter because we're all going to get crushed by an asteroid. So that asteroid that they're calling a city leveler, we keep getting updates about the percentage chance that it could hit Earth, and it keeps going up. So now it apparently has a 3.1% chance of striking Earth in 2032, making it the most threatening space rock ever recorded by modern forecasting. So I'm just reading this. The impact probability at 3.1% translates to odds of 1 in 32. That sounds really bad. That sounds like, what?
Here's what blows my mind about space. So you're talking about 2032, right? That's 7 years from now. This rock is traveling at basically 40,000 miles per hour. and it's going to take approximately 7 years to get to our planet. And that blows my mind. I can't comprehend how big space is. You know, I mean, so yeah, we get the numbers here. We're going to have to get Bruce Willis again and the oil drillers again from Armageddon back together to go out and destroy this thing, put the nuke in it. It's not as big as the 6 mile wide asteroid that hit the Earth 66 million years ago and killed all the dinosaurs. As you mentioned, Jesse, this is considered a city killer. And the odds of it hitting still are not very high. But, I mean, you got to get the group of oil drillers back together, right? I mean, you got to send them up.
Yeah,
Bruce Willis got to go up with the crew again.
I'm scared. 1 in 32?
Yeah, well, I mean, I did like how NASA tried to couch this, and they're like, it's not a level of a crisis. This is just a city killer. I'm like, for that one city, and I'm sure as we got closer, they'd probably be able to pinpoint the city and figure something out. But hearing that if it hit the atmosphere, it would explode midair with a force approximately equal to 500 times the power of the bomb dropped on Hiroshima doesn't exactly give me the warm fuzzies, even if it's not supposed to nuke the entire planet. Even though by then we might all be begging for the sweet release of the asteroid to hit us and take us on to whatever comes next, the way that things are currently going. But Dad, and it always goes back to the point, it's going to be way easier to teach astronauts to drill oil than oil drillers how to be astronauts in here. That was always a flawed premise of the movie, even if it ended up giving us an all-time classic.
I agree. It's a movie that no matter where it is, I stop and watch it every time. Just for oil drillers trying to become astronauts. But you're right. It would be much easier to teach astronauts to drill a hole and drop a nuke down there and blow this up before it hits one of, I think they have it narrowed down to 7 cities, of which I can't pronounce one of them except for Bogota. So, again, 40,000 miles an hour.
You can pronounce Lagos?
Lagos, yeah. I didn't look that far. I just saw
Mumbai, Kolkata, Dhaka. You can pronounce all those. You got this.
I just wasn't
big, strong man.
Wasn't going to try and embarrass me. I still can't get over the fact that 40,000 miles an hour in 7 years. I mean, I can't comprehend it. Cannot comprehend it.
Dad, for all his math prowess, did not do great on if the train leaves the station going at 80 miles an hour question on standardized tests back in the day. Jesse, let's finish off with something easier in the third for today.
Yeah, Lamar Jackson has taken out his infamous braids hairstyle. He posted a picture, and the internet was quick to react by saying it's giving emo Jimmy Butler. You guys remember emo Jimmy Butler? Yeah, so people, unclear if this is just the in-between look and he's going to get a new hairstyle, he's going to put the braids back in. We don't know, but right now it's giving emo Jimmy Butler.
Yeah, it is.
Yep, emo Jimmy Butler. He had the caption Bones paying homage to Snoop Dogg too. So took it out and got the perm done, Dad, here. It would be awesome to see him pull the Jimmy Butler and see more guys start to take liberties with the headshots at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, I have a feeling he's not going to leave it like this, but yes, that definitely gives Jimmy Butler vibes. And it's just amazing of where we are, where a picture of somebody's head of hair can cause a stir on the internet.
I mean, I'm just jealous the people that have hair and get to have conversations about like this. I can't believe you didn't take that as the low-hanging fruit. That's usually the only pitch that you throw in hair conversations here, so I'm stunned that wasn't the one you went to today.
That's true. I mean, I'm trying to think of the last time you had to sit in a barbershop. Wow, had to be years.
It's honestly, that part of it's been nice. Like, I went through the thing at the end where even when I was getting buzz cuts, I was going somewhere to get it done, and I'm like, why don't I just do this at home? I don't need to pay someone to do this. Hell, in college, I used to have my buddy Braxton cut my hair in our garage before training camp. So if you can not waste money going to the salon, you have to spend on other things like the Post Malone Oreos that I stumbled into. Going hungry to the grocery store, really the biggest mistake that you can make, hair or not.
Bad thing.
And spoiler alert,
bad thing.
Very good Oreos. Again, my plea for everyone involved, for the specialty food and Oreo people, put them in a smaller pack. I'm one guy. I don't need the whole gigantic pack of these sitting in my pantry begging me to go there and house the entire sleeve. It's not good for anyone. Good for everyone is downloading, subscribing, rating, and reviewing this podcast. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.